Hi, everybody, and welcome. This is the San Diego School of Creative and Performing Arts, and welcome to our main stage hub. This is our Salon series, and today we have special guests from Hamilton. We have Kim Fisk, Lily Ling, Christopher Henry Young, and Rick Negron. I am Roxane Carrasco, and I am the chair of the theater department at the school. And first of all, I want to say welcome to all of you. It is such an honor and a privilege to have you with us today. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
We're going to start with, I'm going to introduce you, and I'm going to start with Miss Kim Fisk. Kim Fisk is an extraordinary woman. I've known her for decades. And she has been associated with the following Broadway shows: Aida, Titanic, Chicago, How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. She has worked alongside famous directors as Tommy Kail, Casey Nicholaw, Stephen Daldry, Jack O'Brien, and Des McAnuff. That is a major Tony Award-winning list if I ever gave one. Kim is the PSM of Hamilton. Kim, would you tell us what PSM stands for and describe what your duties are?
Absolutely. So the production stage manager, we just sort of take it down to PSM. I manage a team of stage managers, usually 3 of us total, sometimes 4, depending on the size of the show. And me and my team, we're pretty much responsible for facilitating everything that happens from the very beginning of a show, meaning even pre-production, like before anybody else really sort of comes on board. I'm in the office setting up schedules, getting cast information together, contacting people about first rehearsals. And then we sort of manage the rehearsal period in the rehearsal studio, also keeping tabs on the physical show being built in the shops. And then once we get to a venue, our first stop, we sort of run the technical aspects of the show. So all the designers, the design teams work very closely with us to sort of get the show up and running. And then once that process has ended and we've opened the show, we sort of maintain the daily business of the show, of the actual physical show. We're responsible for overseeing the sort of creative aspects of the show throughout our time on it, and we manage all of the scheduling of the show, a lot of the communication between the various departments, and then we run the physical show, either calling cues or running the deck, or in my case, I'll sometimes sit out front and just note the show. So that's the basic gist of what I do along with my team.
Okay, I think you're being humble because you do a lot more than that. And yes, because she's the boss when it comes to the show. But I love that. So I just a couple of quick questions for you. When you're on the road with Hamilton, for example, do you know in advance where you're going to call the show from? And can you tell us what calling a show is? And then where do you call the show from? Is it from the wings or is it from the back of the house?
Yeah, that has adjusted over the years. We used to call from the front of house a lot, but sound and electrics people got tired of running that much cable out front for us. And to be quite honest, being backstage is much more amenable to us staying in tune with the show. Even though you don't have necessarily eyes on the front of the stage at all times, you have a zillion monitors with which to do that, which are very good. And you're sort of more amongst what's happening. So we tend to call Hamilton from stage right. We actually literally have a footprint on our deck that we build that is our little cubicle of space. Some shows don't have something that specific, so you do have to sort of go into each city and look around and see where the most available space is. Because even though our deck is the same in every city, the spaces just off the deck in every city is very different. You could have literally a theater wall right there, or you could have 48 more feet of space stage left or stage right. So it does change on some shows, but on this one, I'm lucky to have a very consistent space. And calling the show means that we basically have a script that we have put together during the technical process that literally is the entire script of the show. And within it, we have all of the cues in the show that we manage. We either call them out loud verbally, which is mostly light cues, or we throw cue lights for things like automation and the fly rail and actor entrances and crew cues that are being like pushed on or pulled off stage. So it's just a way for us to literally have that in front of us, and we literally go through page by page as the show progresses and call those cues or throw those cues, so that it's all happening consistently.
And just out of curiosity, when you're finished with a show, do you keep your call book, or do you? Yeah,
yeah. I have
it's your Bible, isn't it?
Stack of cue books back here in my library. So yeah.
Oh, I know a lot of students that would love to get their hands on that. Okay, I'm going to move on to your colleague. I'd like to introduce Lily Ling. Lily Ling is another amazing woman because she's the first in some ways, and I'll let her share that in a second. But the shows that she's been associated with have been The Lion King in Shanghai, which I think is really cool. And also the Chinese premiere of Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder. And I know some of my students are going to get giddy about that. That's one of their favorite musicals. And then the Canadian productions of Kinky Boots, Next to Normal, Once on This Island, Adam Gettle's Light in the Piazza, which was the Canadian premiere, as well as Parade. Some great orchestral pieces to work on and conduct. How thrilling. So Lily is the MD of Hamilton. Can you tell us what that stands for and what your duties are?
I am the music director, and I report to the boss, that is Kim Fisk. She makes the magic happen. So the music director, basically, I like to think of it, anything that you hear in the show, I basically have a hand in, and I love my job. It's one of my favorite things because we actually get to work with every department. So we get to work with the actors, and so we teach the actors the music, and we get to work with the swings, and we get to be in rehearsals. And for Hamilton, very specifically, we have, as a part of our audition, we have to be able to play and rap at the same time. That is like one of the things. Yes. And I still remember when the first time I did an audition, I was in Shanghai trying to do The Lion King in Mandarin and, all the South African dialects, and then learning how to rap Hamilton, and then make an audition video for Alex Lacamoire. So that's one of the things we have to be able to do. It's thrilling, and you stumble over yourself all the time. And then we also get to work with the band, which is amazing. It sounds exactly like the soundtrack. I remember the first time we had our band rehearsal, which was with the second national tour, the Philip tour, and we were in Seattle. I remember, and at the time I was the associate music director, and I played keyboard too. And when I played the keyboard and the sound came out, I remember going, oh, it sounds like the soundtrack. But during the show, as the music director, I actually also have the amazing job of conducting and playing at the same time. So there's 2 keyboards. So I get to play, and I do that about 6 shows a week. And then at least 1 show a week, I will also be in the audience and noting the show. And then another show, usually I am rehearsing. And then the other thing I love to be able to do is I get to work with sound. So whenever we get new actors, we get to EQ, we get to work with their voices to make it sound really great. And so those are all things that, and I get to check in with the actors. I think with every actor, because I get to conduct the show, we always have like our little moments every day. And as we all get comfortable, we get to look at each other, we get to check in, and it's just, I love my job. Yeah.
I can tell. I love your enthusiasm. You're a fan. And there's nothing sweeter than sitting in the pit and hearing the music live and recognizing and going, oh, because it's around you. It's very different than being on stage and hearing it or listening to the album, but being in that pit. So when you say that you play and conduct 6 shows a week, because typically you do 8, and so you're sitting out for at least 1 show a week, and you say that you notate it, and so did Kim. Describe for us what you're notating. Why are you out there listening to the show?
So sometimes it's when we try to make sure that we know a show when we know we have covers or understudies on, because then when I know the show when I conduct, but then I actually get to hear the show without, having to fiddle with playing and conducting. I listen to the mix, which is why I usually listen at the soundboard, and I also, just give balance notes to our sound mixer. And then the way that Alex Blackmore likes to describe it's never a gotcha thing. We never want to note for the sake of noting. We sit there and we kind of go along with the ride with the audience, and if something catches our ear, then we'll note it. So that's how I like to do it.
I like that, what you said. It's not a gotcha moment. You're not out there going wrong note. Yeah, you're taking the whole picture in audio with audio audibly, orally,
Audibly?
Auditorily.
auditorially. Thank you, panel. And then one last thing, when you're taking those, did you say you actually sit at the soundboard when you're taking those notes, or do you sit in the
that soundboard is huge. So we get to, and there's actually an area for us to sit, and sometimes we get to also we have avions. I don't know if that's something that you guys, the students, are used to, but we actually get to dial in and listen to the band as well. So that's something that I will do. In the audience, the problem is it's really hard to write, and then typing, and you have people who have paid so much money to see the show, and if they
don't want to watch you writing,
they're not happy with that.
Yeah. They used to come out with those special pens that you could sit in the computer and write. Yeah, but that's not cool. All right. Well, thank you, Lily.
Thank you.
One little braggy thing. It's not common for women to be MDs or conductors. And I want to give you a shout out, because I think it's super cool that you're the first female to hold the title of music director and the first East Asian to conduct the show. That is like props. So bravo. All right, I'm going to move on to Christopher Henry Young. Hello, sir. Good evening.
Hi.
Christopher Henry Young is a talented performer. He's been in the biz for a while. You would know him on Broadway from A Bronx Tale, the musical. And he's also been associated with other great musicals, The Wiz, Guys and Dolls, and The Workshop. And my students know what a Broadway workshop is. And that means he was helping to create the show, which is Ain't Too Proud, The Life and Times of the Temptations. And now he is a part of the cast of Hamilton. And he has a very specific role, and he is a swing. So, Christopher, would you please share with us what a swing does and what your duties are every night? What's a typical night for you?
So I've always described swinging as being an offstage member of the ensemble. And essentially, the reason why I say it that way is because there's this antiquated idea that swings are this separate kind of in the broom closet part of the production, and somehow, and that's especially with a show like Hamilton can never be more incorrect. And so I essentially learn the entirety, vocal lines, backstage traffic, costume changes, onstage choreography, of every male ensemble member. So for Hamilton, that's 6 different men. And anytime any of them are out of the show, myself along with 4 other, there are 5 offstage male swings. So 4 other men also do that similar thing. And anytime, for whatever reasons, be it illness, day off, previous engagement, a swing out, which is when they try to periodically swing either members of the onstage ensemble off for various reasons, or with Hamilton is also kind of a specific case where we tried to get the offstage swings into their new roles on shows. So anytime any of that happens, I could be on stage, sometimes after the show's even started, as it had become quite regular for me. But yeah, that happens a lot to me. But yeah, so my job is to be prepared.
But Kim relies on you, yeah?
And I rely on her. The only reason I'm even able to do it is because Lily and Kim got me together. So the long and short of it is that swings are offstage members of the ensemble. We learn the entire show, and our job is to make sure that the old saying of the show must go on always happens. That's part of what we do.
Okay. So, when you say that you're swinging for the male ensemble, and there's 4 other gentlemen also swinging the show?
Yeah, and so swinging, I do want to preface by saying this. Swinging in the industry takes various forms, and it's still really in its infancy, to be quite honest. It's a very new thing to the entirety of the industry, so much so that regional theaters are only just now starting to hire swings in
That's
certain places
true.
of the country. So by that token, Hamilton's version of swinging is, in my opinion, the most complex because there are so many. So for the male ensemble, there are 4 men who directly cover all 6 men, and then 1 man who covers part
Special.
on-stage ensemble and part principal company. And that is a thing that's relatively different
Yeah.
and specific to Hamilton, along with some other shows historically, but most notably Hamilton.
That's not necessarily common. Is that
No.
a swing will sometimes only cover ensemble, and then there's understudies or covers or standbys that cover principals.
Absolutely.
But there has been a move of swings that can do both. And what does that do for people like that, Christopher? It just makes you more.
Yeah, it's a valuable thing to be a part of. It's a lucrative thing to be a part of. But honestly, the thing that I've learned to be true about swinging is, and part of why I really kind of went headfirst into it once someone kind of put it at me in the profession, is because I've always thought that I could handle various parts of our industry in ways that other artists can or cannot. And I get a thrill out of being able to have to rise to the occasion for all those various parts, with, again, none of the role, unlike most musicals, the ensemble is as specific as the principal company as far as character, your arc in the show, what you're singing, why you're doing it, where you're doing it. So in a show like Hamilton, not only are you asked to do like stage left choreography or stage right, that's not a thing. It's more like you're a different human every 5 minutes in this show. And each different track or role in the ensemble has a completely different pathway of being multiple humans. And you're not just asked, you are hired because you're supposed to be able to embody all the difference between the individual person that I am tonight, man 1, and the 6 people he plays throughout the show. So I've been pushed to the limits of my artistry with Hamilton because I've always believed that I was a better singer than dancer. That's just my personal belief. I don't know how true that is, but Hamilton tested that because I had to be able to sing 4 different types of vocal parts, from low baritone to annoyingly high tenor, and sing some crunchy harmonies. And as Lily pointed out, when she notes the show, she could tune into my singular voice and hear just me. And so if I ever thought I was a good singer, it has been proven by being hired for Hamilton. So that's fun.
Lily, you want to make any comments? Lily?
I have never done that to Christopher Henry Young.
Okay, good. So I'm going to give you a little kudos and shout out because I know what it takes to be a swing. Having been one myself, as well as being a dance captain, putting swings into shows and people into shows. I got to say, oftentimes the swings, I'm not speaking about myself, but in general, swings are the most talented people. They have to be, because they have to be super versatile and be able to adjust on a dime. And it's not an easy job. And the fact that you have like the dream job of swinging Hamilton, that's pretty remarkable. So bravo to you.
And I wanted to mention to anyone who's listening, if you have any interest in being a swing, the most important thing to know, above whatever ability or talents you have, is that your most valuable talent is to be able to say yes, thank you, because not only is the role not something you singularly created, but you are part of a massive puzzle. So I think I've always believed that the part of the reason why I continue to get hired is because I rarely have like those sticky moments of like, oh, I don't wanna kind of thing. I just go, okay. And unless I'm in danger because I'm like taller than most of the artists I cover, and I'm like, oh, as a tall person, this is gonna be stressful. Otherwise, I normally just say yes, okay, because the fun I get to have is kind of dependent on everyone liking me. So like, let's just get to it so I can get on stage and slay the game and have a good old time doing it. So
but I also really like what you just said. The yes, thank you. That's what we teach in theater is yes and.
Mm-hmm.
And the way you're approaching your job is yes and what else?
Right.
Bravo.
Right.
Yeah, I love it. All right, I'm going to move on to your colleague, Rick Negron. Wow. Okay, this resume is very impressive. So I'm only going to list a couple of the things.
We don't have that much time.
We don't have that much time. Okay. So on Broadway, he was involved with the show Leader of the Pack, Man of La Mancha, and yes, my students of SCPA musical theater program, he was in The Heights. He played Kevin Rosario. He also danced in the movie Chicago and also in Michael Jackson's Bad video. And I know some of my students are our students are gonna love that. He's also done multiple national tours, and I'm gonna just list two of them, which is West Side Story and Man of La Mancha. Senor, your resume is something else. And I believe you play King George in Hamilton. So tell us what your life is like playing that role on a national tour.
Well, wow, that's a hard introduction to follow. What do I do? What do I say? Yeah, when you've been in the business as long as I have, you end up having a lot of credits. I'm your first Puerto Rican king, and I'm probably most definitely your oldest king. And that's okay. That's okay. There's a certain amount of gravitas that comes with that. I'm just so fortunate to be part of the Hamilton family, and for me it's an extension of my In the Heights family that started back in 2005 when I did a workshop of In the Heights. And by the way, Roxane, there's 3 swings on this call because I swang 2 shows on Broadway, both The Mystery of Edwin Drood, which was my first swing job, and guess who my dance captain was back then?
Who?
A dancer named Rob Marshall.
I love it. I'm dance captain for him. Yeah, nice.
And you know, he's gone on to do incredible things. And I also I was a swing on Man of La Mancha the first time I did Man of La Mancha with Raul Julia on Broadway. And so I come to the business with that gypsy ensemble swing understudy mindset, and yes and yes, thank you, and what else is the way you survive as a swing, because you need everybody's help to get you through the job, to get you through you haven't done that track in 6 months, and you're thrown in all of a sudden, and maybe you have a what I call a Sybil moment on stage, and you forget who you are or where you're supposed to go, and you have a fellow company member that grabs your shoulder and says, "This way."
Yeah.
And thank God.
Yes.
Thank God for those moments. We're all out there looking out for each other. And so, yes, thank you. And what's next is the way to go. How do I feel about doing this role? I mean, it was a gift from heaven. My good friend Lin-Manuel was so kind to, you know, think outside the bubble and hire an older Puerto Rican guy to play the king. It was a stroke of genius, because we went to Puerto Rico and I literally performed the show 4 blocks away from the hospital where I was born. It was super emotional to be there, to be, you know, home with my people, raising money for the arts. We've raised $15 million in our Puerto Rico run. It was amazing. I know everybody on this call that was there. I'm so sorry Lily wasn't there, because she joined us later in San Fran, but she was there in spirit because she's a part of our family. It was an amazing experience that started in Puerto Rico with Lynn, and then transferred, you know, this amazing company transferred to San Francisco, and we had an amazing time in San Francisco up until the pandemic hit. And it just every day has been a gift, getting to work on Hamilton in this incredible piece with these incredible people.
I love it. I love it. So I want to go back to In the Heights for a second. We did it. We did it here in the spring. And unfortunately, yes, and the cast was amazing. We unfortunately only got to do one public performance due to COVID. Our opening night was on the day we had to leave. So I have to say that as a longtime performer in the Heights, when that happened, I saw it. I was invited to see it. I was up for replacement, and I was invited to see it, and I saw it from the balcony, house right. And I'm going to get emotional. I started watching that, and I think I was like, what? Watching the show. And then halfway through Act 1, I started crying because I could relate to the material. I could relate to the storytelling. I could relate to so many things there that I hadn't quite seen yet on Broadway. And then by the time we got to Act 2, I was screaming when the flags were going up, and I was out there, obnoxious audience member. And it was me 3 times up in that balcony screaming. I loved it. I loved that Latinos were represented that way. It was powerful, exciting. Tell me a little bit about how that was for you, being a part of that.
Wow. Well, it's a long story, but the short version is that when I was a dancer back in the 80s on Broadway, I had a lot of friends that went on to do incredible things, and one of them was Sergio Trujillo,
Right.
who's the choreographer, director, done a ton of shows that you know about. Anyway, in 2005, he called me because he was the choreographer on the workshop of In the Heights back at that time. And then it later went to Andy Blankenbuehler, and the rest is history. But Sergio called me and said, listen, there's this little show called In the Heights, and they're doing a workshop at the O'Neill. And, it's a great show. There's no money, but hey, come on, you should try it. It'd be a great role for you. Cut to probably one of the most incredible experiences of my life, that workshop, meeting Tommy Kail and Lin-Manuel back when they were young bucks, and Alex Lacamoire and Chris Jackson and so many people that are lifelong friends now. And then I wasn't cast for the original company for plenty of reasons, but then I was able to take over the role about 8 months into the run on Broadway, and I did it on Broadway for 2 years. And it was...
I saw you.
Unbelievable. Thank you. You saw me. The experience was unbelievable. We used to call it party con pay.
Oh, yeah.
Going to work every day was a party. And we loved doing it because all these Latinos were on Broadway working, which is a rarity. And then not only that, but we're telling this really important story about our culture and our neighborhoods, and and in many cultures, Cuban, Dominican, Puerto Rican, Mexican, there's a whole Latinx world that was suddenly being celebrated. And there wasn't a stereotype in the show. There wasn't a drug dealer or
that's right.
None of that. It was all positive. Lynn used to say it was the Hispanic fiddler on the roof, which is pretty good. But again, an incredible experience for me as a Latino, as a chorus boy. Finally getting to do a role on Broadway was mind blowing.
Sure.
And my co-star was my idol when I was in high school, Priscilla Lopez.
Lopez.
I remember sitting in my living
idol
room listening to her the record of a chorus line and listening to What I Did for Love over and over again. Then to be with her as her husband on stage was...
Oh, I'm sure. So she's my idol too. And I wanted to be a movie star until I was handed the album of a chorus line and I saw the name Lopez and I went, ooh, I could do that. That literally triggered, and it was seeing her name. And she's my I love her. I love Priscilla.
She's a beautiful, beautiful lady inside and out.
Isn't she? Isn't she?
Inside and out.
And if you're listening or watching,
talent.
Priscilla, we love you. Okay, so I'm gonna stay with Rick for just 1 second longer. And Rick, I would like you to share with us when did you decide that you wanted to do musical theater or be an actor? And then was there a pivotal moment? And then how did you get there?
Ooh, early on, I saw West Side Story, and I remember I saw West Side Story in the movie theater and I must have been 8, 9 years old, and something clicked for me. And it happened. And my mom happened to be the drama teacher at school.
Oh, how convenient.
So lo and behold, by the time I was 10 years old, I wasn't being groomed in any way, but I was exposed to theater and musicals. And then I just happened one day, my mom said, hey, we're going to go see this professional theater having auditions for some musical. And I just want to see what a real professional audition is like. Well, she took me along. And then I, of course, like said, oh, well, see you, Mom. I'm going to go audition for this thing. And at 10 years old. And, you know,
and this is in Puerto Rico, no?
Yeah, I got my first professional show at 10. I became a member of the union. So I've been a union member for a really long time. Proud union member. But anyway, that was my trajectory. Started really young, you know, danced in TV shows in Puerto Rico. I started dancing in my teens and then went to Sarah Lawrence, got a degree there. I was going to be a concert dancer out of college. I was groomed to be a modern dancer, and so I briefly worked with the Paul Taylor Dance Company as an intern, and I was on scholarship at Ailey for a bit, and then I realized you make more money on Broadway than you do in dance concerts. I'm going to do the Broadway thing. So I made my Broadway debut in 1985 in Leader of the Pack.
Wow.
One of the first jukebox musicals. It was Ellie Greenwich music. Yeah. And it was directed and choreographed by Michael Peters, who choreographed Thriller and Beat It. So everything goes round in circles. You know, it's all like, whoop.
And did he choreograph Bad too? Is that why you did Bad?
No, funnily enough, he did all those in LA. Bad was one of Michael's few videos that was shot in New York. And so if you look at the Bad video, it's all New York dancers. A very 16-year-old Desmond Richardson, who later became a huge dancer at Ailey. He's 16. He was in the second company, Ailey, at the time. He's in the video. All these Broadway guys are in the video that you never see in any of Michael's other videos, because all the other videos were shot in LA. And the dancer that choreographed the Bad video was Greg Burge, the incredible Greg Burge, who won a Tony for Sophisticated Ladies. And, you know, he passed during the 80s, you know, because of that, you know, terrible time on Broadway with the AIDS epidemic. But he was an incredible dancer and an incredible friend, and that's how I got in.
So we have a question for you, Rick, from one of our students. This is from Kayla, and she's asking, Mr. Negron, I noticed you did both film and stage theater. How did you balance that?
Well, you know, my love is theater. I mean, it really is, and I can say that now in hindsight. Even when I you know, we lived in New York, I did a commercial here. I didn't really do much film and TV in New York, but I consciously made a move to move to California because I wanted to do more film and TV. I wanted to see what it was all about. And I thought, you know, if I get some notoriety in film and TV, I can basically get into any Broadway show I want. Back when I did the move, a lot of Broadway shows were being populated. The leads were being populated by TV and film stars. So I thought, well, that's going to be my way back to New York. Well, I ended up marrying my wife in LA and staying here a really long time. But and working in TV and film here and there. But the truth of the matter is that I found out that the process of film and TV is lucrative, but for me, not as artistically fulfilling as theater. You know, getting up at 5 a.m. and sitting in a trailer for 4 hours, and then maybe getting a couple rehearsals and then filming a scene, and then you're done, is not my idea of a good time. My idea of a good time is going through a 4-week rehearsal process, you know, gelling with these people, and then creating something on stage and getting that instant reaction from an audience every night. That is a good time.
I'm with you on that. And it's also the fact that you get to arc as an actor. You're telling a story from beginning to end. Whereas on any day filming, it might be just act 2, scene 6 you're doing, and then going back to the beginning. It's very woo.
And for me specifically, the thing that got me the most is that once you do that scene, it's there for posterity, and I walk away going, oh, I could have done this.
I could have, woulda. Right.
And in theater, tomorrow night, if you messed up tonight, you get to fix it tomorrow.
That's right.
And every night you're given the opportunity to make it better.
That's right. Okay, I'm going to jump over to Christopher. Christopher, when did you decide that you needed to be a performer? And then how did you get there?
So I've always spoken about my career into theater as kind of like it happened out of necessity type thing. The long and short of it is that I lost my biological father when I was 12, turning 13, and went from this kind of lively, bubbly, artsy kid to basically not speaking for 2 months. And my mother and my stepfather knew that arts were something that I kind of excelled in because I danced separately and kind of sung in church choir and some other things. And so my mother said to me, and I remember this just because it like was shocking to me. She was like, if you can't find your own voice right now, maybe we can help you like transition into something that could help you find voice through other people, other characters. And so theater became that for me. And so it was kind of out of necessity. I went through loss that I couldn't channel at the time. I didn't know how to channel, but wanted to. And my parents married the things that I'd already kind of done into one thing. And so that was teenage high school Christopher, like, I'm in theater because I can't speak yet. And then it became this thing of like, I get to empathize with other humans. And it was also this political stance because I was one of 12 Black people in my 500 student school. And then I got to play, you know, Marius and Les Mis and all these really interesting characters that will probably never happen again. So then it was this really cool thing of like, I really get to find who the heck I am through this world and through these other people that I get to know every time I dive into who they are. And so around sophomore year is when my theater teacher, who is now a good friend in life, and who I now work with through different workshops around the country, he was like, so college, what are you thinking? And I was like, oh, probably like communications or journalism. And he couldn't understand any of the words that came out of my mouth because my whole thought process was, especially because I was so new, I'd only started my freshman year. So I didn't even know that there really was a way to do it professionally other than like, you knew people and I didn't know people. So I auditioned for a theme park. Things happened, went to college for something else. Auditioned for a theme park the summer after my freshman year, Hershey Park in Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Oh yeah.
And wound up being the youngest in that company for this premiere show, this tap dance show that they did. And that is when I knew that I had to do this because largely I just did not believe that life was going to offer me this thing that had become so pivotal as a career. That just didn't seem human to me. Like, you love something that much, there's no way you can make a living out of it. So it wasn't until I got that first job on my own merit. My resume was all high school credits at the time that I just kind of put the name of the director as opposed to where it was. My headshot was one we took against a wall outside the Hershey Theater building because my friend was like, we need to get you a headshot. And we printed it out at a Rite Aid. And so it all just kind of fell together. I'm currently working with the man who hired me for that first job, and he reminded me of the story that I'd forgotten. I got the job because I messed up and kept going. In my audition, they had me dance with the choreographer. She did some move that I wasn't prepared for, and as opposed to being flustered or stopping, I just kind of rolled with it and then like character acted and then jumped back in when I knew the next thing. And he said that's the thing that landed me a job. All these years later, I never knew that, but fun times.
I love it.
But it was kind of the confidence of booking the show that made me go like, oh, I can parlay this passion, this thing that saved my emotional self into a career.
I see too on your resume that you also are teaching, like you said, master classes and all of that. And I just want to say, as a fellow teacher, how appreciative I am to hear that, because I can hear that you're passionate about what you do. And I love your story of how you got here. I'm sorry about your father's loss, but it sounds like that seemed to be a gift in some ways, that he left you a gift, which was to find yourself and find your voice. And thank God for your mother, right?
Yes. And she and my stepfather are huge supporters of the arts. And like you said, if there is ever a blessing in any tragedy, a positive blessing in any tragedy, for me, it was that I found this thing that has led me to the life I know now. So I'm
Yeah.
And I teach specifically because of that. I'm like, I would have not found this thing if it weren't for someone just saying, hey, try this. You may not succeed, but try it. And now my kind of philosophy on mentoring, teaching, whatever it is how do we find your best you and how do we make magic out of that? Like, you don't have to be me. You don't have to sing how I sing.
Nope.
Your artistry will come from whatever the best you is. And then we make that look interesting and we play with that more, you know?
Yeah, that is particularly a key element that we practice here in the school, is that we're looking for every kid's genius. And I don't need you to be like me or do it like that. Or it's discovering the genius within. And that's what I find joy in as a teacher. And it's really important because we're all artists, and it's finding what we have to contribute. There's a question here, and I'm going to ask Lily, what is your favorite part about the show?
My favorite part, I always have two answers. My favorite part to listen to, I remember the first time I heard it, Satisfy blew my mind. The first time, and then without realizing what it was, and then seeing it the first time again, it just, and having such a complex character that is Angelica Schuyler. And, when we talk, and I just feel like as a woman, I'm so proud to be in the show as well, because a lot of times when we talk about history, so much of it is about the men, no offense, gents. And, but the women who are the ones who are either at home, and taking care of the kids, and they have lives and they have such amazing inner life, of their own. And also, sometimes they're the ones like Angelica who are just as smart. And the amount of times when I've heard somebody, whether it's on the creative team or an actor, say, if Angelica was a man, she would have been the founding father, and just to hear that come to life every night is amazing. So that's my favorite song to listen to. My favorite song to play is Burn. Because it's one of the only songs in the show, it's one of the only pieces in the show where we don't play to a click. So the show is about 95% click with a metronome and, just to line everything up. And it's
what you mean by click is?
Yeah, so a click is basically a metronome, and the click is the entire band. We play to that click. We always say we try to bury that click. So every and with that timing, because so much, again, with what Kim does, everything is so intricate, so that everything in terms of the automation and the lights, everything syncs up. So then the show runs like clockwork, and then actors, whenever they say, oh, well, that feels a little fast, a little slow, I'm like, nope, that's on the click. Nope, it's you. It's not me, it's you. But
so you don't have any drama with the dance captain questioning your timing. No.
Yeah, we're like, there's been days where someone's come, they're like, does that feel? Nope, it's clicked. Sorry.
Yeah, no. I love it.
But the thing I love about Burn is that it's so piano driven, and because it's not clicked except for the very beginning, just to set up the tempo, the entire band gets to breathe and live together. And then the thing I personally really enjoy, it's really cathartic because you kind of just get to bash the shit out of the piano. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Bash the beep. Because sometimes, when you're having a bad day, the release is amazing and it just feels great. So that's the thing I personally love.
I love that. Kim, what's your favorite part of the show?
I also have sort of two moments that really sort of always speak to me. The last, minute of my shot gets me every time. Just watching those guys just like forcefully come down stage at the end, like that whole thing. I sit out front and get chills every time. And then the other one that just really moves me is Dear Theodosia. I mean, there's just been all this chaotic and movement and stuff happening, and all of a sudden it just sucks down to these two men talking about their hearts and their children and their longevity. And I just find it beautiful and so simple. But the thing I really love about the show the most is that I've been doing Hamilton for minus this little break we've had, like 3.5 years. I did the first tour, the Angelica tour, before this one. And I still learn things about the show every day. Like, this is not the kind of show where you're going to be like, oh yeah, I'm done. I get it. I know everything. No, you never know everything on this show. It is a constant learning process. And everything from how something looks in a certain light to a storyline moment that you might never have tuned into before. It's just, the show is so full that you can't ever fully feel like you have just nailed it. And I love that about it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for that. So we have a question here from Sarah, and it's for Christopher. It says, which part that you play as a swing? What's your favorite part that you get to swing?
So my favorite, the one that I enjoy doing the most is what they call Man 2. And it's a Samuel Seabury track or role in our production. And I like that one the most because somehow the artist who originated that role made sure they avoided certain things. So he is not the most lift heavy. He's rarely on the floor.
Thane Jasperson.
Thank you. So we came up with a theory that whenever someone was being lifted, Thane was in the bathroom. Like, that's what we always joke about as swings. Because he's only in that 1 or 2 lifts in the whole show that are like frustrating moments as an older dancer. And also because it also seems that for whatever reasons, that role winds up having like the cutest breaks. Whereas for instance, in Yorktown, there's this moment where all the male ensemble dancers go from essentially being various things to preparing for like the big dance break. And every other role except for this one is like rolling on the floor or lifting a thing or throwing. And then Man 2, Samuel Seabury just walks off stage, grabs a coat, chills for a moment. Hercules Mulligan, like, it's great. And again, I am tall and 30 and have danced since I was 19 professionally. So my body is like reminding me of that. Like, you've worked hard for 11 years. And so a show like Hamilton is like such a thrill, but we love that Man 2 role of like, you don't have to lift.
Now, I'm not sure we get that, but
yeah. We love her. Yeah, it's great.
and by the way, Thane has been there since the first workshop. He's still in the original company. He's the last member of the original company, there. So he custom made that role for himself from the very beginning.
Well, I think,
and he's also been in the business a while.
Well, that's what I was going to say. He must be experienced, because if you're experienced enough, you know, when building the show, you know what? I'm not going to volunteer that I can do the backflip. No.
If you plan on doing the show for years, because here's the other trick. All the other ensemble men who created these roles pieced out after the Tonys, and Thane was like, I'll be here. And so his role allows him to do that. I don't know so much about those other male ensemble men. They were ambitious.
So I'm going to shift the conversation and talk a little bit about casting, and talk about the fact that we're such a diverse group of people discussing the show, and how Hamilton has really changed things. It set a model for inclusion. And I've seen interviews with Lin-Manuel discussing that he wasn't looking for an African-American or a Puerto Rican or a Caucasian. He was looking for the best storyteller in his style of approach. And I'm wondering, does anyone recall what that breakdown looked like for Hamilton? Did it say Latinos only or ethnic only, or do you recall what those breakdowns said? What breakdowns, by the way, are the description for the audition of what the casting director is looking for, or the directors, producers are looking for. So we get a breakdown prior to walking in the room so that we understand what we're trying to fit. So do you recall what the breakdowns looked like for Hamilton?
So I was going to say, no, go for it, actually.
No, I was going to ask Kim, because I remember there was some controversy early on in the wording of the equity principal audition breakdown, that the wording was a certain way, and some people were interpreting it as excluding whites. And
Yes.
indeed, that was not the wording. The wording got changed a little bit so that there was no appearance of exclusion, that it is completely open and encouraging people ethnically ambiguous to come in. But Kim, you can speak to that better than me because you've been in the Hamilton world longer than me.
Yeah, but you know what? I have so little to do with the casting part of it, but I really haven't. You probably have more experience having been in the room.
Right. Well,
than I would have.
Chris, what's your experience of it?
So I auditioned for Hamilton after the controversy of that casting thing. And the change is that in the original breakdown, when this controversy first hit, it did say non-Caucasian was the wording for every principal member except King George. So for all the other principals, the wording behind that title in the breakdown said non-Caucasian. Those of us who knew the show also know that King George, along with the ensemble, allowed anyone of any race to be a part of it, period. So the controversy was a little crazy for that reason, is that though these characters were not envisioned as such a race, there's still room for everyone. By the time I'd auditioned, it said open to performers of all ethnicities in the breakdowns, period. Which is a different thing altogether. And I think it's been specified more since then to kind of not bar anyone, but honor what is. But for my breakdowns, it said open to all ethnicities is the wording that we're in.
So that doesn't sound like excluding Caucasians. It's just all open.
Yeah,
open.
Well, and the conversation amongst auditioneers at the time was like, there are 40 houses on Broadway of shows. 20 of them at the time had musicals. Hamilton was one of the only culture-based, colorized companies at the time. So if anyone was arguing exclusion, the numbers just didn't support that theory, though I honor your emotional journey. And as a person of color who saw a show where my storyline wasn't reflective of my cultures, being downtrodden and stressed about life, I didn't have the emotional capacity to support someone's other emotional journey in this exclusion moment.
What a beautiful way to say that. Because it's so funny. Everything has a perspective. You know, so on that note, I know I personally have had issues with inclusion or exclusion. I'm just raise of hands. Have you at any point in your career struggled with that being excluded because of your ethnicity or because of your gender? Yeah. And right. So I think it's a discussion, and I'm wondering how you feel about it. I often wonder if this general discussion about casting and about can a homosexual play a straight man? Should a straight man be allowed to play a homosexual? Should a woman or a cisgender woman be able to play a non-binary character? Should a Latino be able to play a Caucasian role? Should et cetera, et cetera. I'm wondering if that discussion needs to happen with each show, or if you think that discussion needs to be broader. Do we still need to have that discussion?
Absolutely.
I think so.
And Broadway right now is very much in the midst of having those conversations, and producers and theater owner. Like, it's a very active topic right now, which I think we're all very grateful for. I mean, unfortunately, it took very, very unfortunate events to get us there. But I think Broadway is really trying to step up and do better in many ways. All of our unions are doing a lot of inclusive work and trying to sort of open up the ranks. The producers and directors, like, everybody is on board with making this all better. So we hope that when we return, whenever that may be, that there's a big change happening, and we're going to really see the results very soon.
And a lot of it is based in perspective, as was mentioned before. I mean, the unfortunate truth that I actually think this panel specifically can all speak to in different ways is that largely in previous incarnations of these conversations, either the most helpful people to the conversation weren't a part of it, i.e. women abdicating on behalf of their womanness, queer people abdicating on behalf of their queerness, etc. And so those perspectives were missing. And so we then had to compete with people trying to make decisions on behalf of people who weren't able to speak to their experience. And you had this exhausting lack of specificity because the world is incredibly broad, and yet we continuously try to narrow it down to these like cut and paste little trinkets. So when we talk about casting, again, with a show like Hamilton, if what you're really upset about is that you specifically can't play Angelica, that is a journey for you. But if your whole goal is just to be in Hamilton, get these ensemble choreography together, learn that King George speech, and there's room for you if you are not a person of color. So it's sometimes about perspective and not making it like as cut and dry. It's not that cut and dry. And I imagine you as in the high school realm of education theater, understand that as well, because sometimes the picture is so much broader and more complex than it is allowed to be in conversation.
And if I could just add in a little bit, like I'm an immigrant. I was born in China and then I immigrated to Canada. So hello from Canada. And I find it exactly what I completely agree with everybody saying. And I think there are all these conversations right now, but in the end, I think it's just about being human. I've heard so many friends talking about the fact that, Christopher's newly married and, and
congratulations.
And I feel, and so many people have said, like a same-sex marriage, it's not any different than a heterosexual marriage or a relationship. A marriage is a marriage, is a relationship. And for me personally, I've never seen, and I never grew up seeing my people on the stage. But one thing I will say is this: I remember the first time I heard about and I saw Miss Saigon, and in the original incarnation. And this happens a lot in Canada, so I can't speak for the US, but when Miss Saigon was happening, there was so much talk about, we're going to pat ourselves on the back for Asian inclusion, Asian representation, but for us, we're like, none of them are East Asian, they're all Filipino. And if you ask any Asian, they're not the same. And for the longest time, the leads of Miss Saigon have never been played by a real Vietnamese or even an East Asian. But here's the thing, here's what I will say. You have to start somewhere. And the fact that the story is being told and people are hearing these stories, that's what will, I think, inspire other stories to be written. And I think as long as the storytellers and the performers are doing it from a place of empathy and a place of wanting to learn and just humanity, for me, as an Asian artist, I'm just happy that these stories are being told by whomever, as long as it's from a place of care.
Here. I love you for that. I agree with you. That was beautifully stated. I could talk to you guys for hours and hours. This has been awesome. We're actually
Roxane, I wanted to do one caveat to that.
Oh, yes, please.
Because I'm the guy that's half Irish, half Puerto Rican. So I've played Jets and I've played Sharks, and I've been able to dip in that world. But, that's beside the point. To me, there's really two different things. There's the fact that for centuries, decades, minorities have not been represented in the theater and in mass media. And so that's something that's shifting now, because the numbers of minorities that have education and are in positions of power and are creating art, that's shifting, so now the arts are starting to reflect the broad community. But then there's there's a question of it's going too far now. Now, when you watch a show like Narcos, they want all the guys to be Colombian, and everybody was in a big uproar because the main lead guy that played the big, I forget the character's name, he was Portuguese. And, and his Spanish wasn't Colombian. You get to the point where you start splitting hairs, where a straight guy can't play a gay character now, or it goes too far. in certain aspects. I think, when actors say, "I'm an actor, I should be able to play all kinds of roles." So for that reason, I think Lynn has really pushed the envelope on Broadway within the Heights and Hamilton, and therefore, and then hired John Chu, an Asian American filmmaker, to direct In the Heights, the movie. I mean, it's just, he's the guy that's pushing that envelope in all directions. And I applaud him. And I've seen productions of In the Heights in schools or here in the LA area. And I've seen, productions where it's not all Latino and Black and there's white kids, because that production, it's mirroring the community, and it's allowing it's being authentically inclusive. And inclusive means letting everybody play in the playground, white, brown, Black, Asian, it doesn't matter.
I love you for saying that. We had a very multiracial cast of In the Heights, and I loved the cast. They were hand chosen for their storytelling, and they were all walks of life. And it was in some ways even more beautiful to see that, seeing them sing in Spanish than an entire Latino cast. So yeah, I think what we do and the art that you do, particularly with Hamilton, is super important. The impact that Hamilton and the idea of inclusion and the story. I mean, it's a history lesson. It's gotten kids excited about history. It has infiltrated everywhere. Does anyone watch The Boys here? The show The Boys. The other day, there was a scene where the bad mobster guys, under their breath in Russian, are going, "I don't believe Puerto Rican is, Hamilton should not be played by Puerto Rican." Oh, no, it's a metaphor. It's a metaphor. And they're discussing, these bad guys discussing. No, it's a metaphor for the immigrants today. And it is everywhere. And we thank you for being a part of that and for sharing your time with us. As we go out, I would love it for each of you to give our kids one nugget of information, something that you learned along the way that has carried you to where you are today. Something like a piece of advice as we sign off here. I would love it. Let's start with who's ready to go first? Kim?
Sure. I'll go first.
She the boss, remember?
I would just say that one of the things I have learned over the years is how open-minded you have to remain and how flexible you have to be to stay healthy in this business. And that is not something that, as a stage manager, when I was a younger stage manager, I thought there were rules and ways of doing things and everything was black and white. There is no black and white. It is all gray area. And you have to be able to roll those punches. And if you're open to doing that, it is just the most remarkable career that you could ever ask for. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Christopher.
Yeah, and piggybacking off of kind of what Kim alluded to, it all has to be done in service to the work. Like, that is the best thing that my mentor ever taught me, was like, are you riffing because your voice sounds pretty, or does it support whatever emotion is happening in that song? If you're doing it because your voice sounds pretty, get to the shower. But if you're trying to support the work, we have a conversation. And like Kim said, like, it can be the most rewarding world if you just filter everything through, okay, am I being vain, or is this important to the work, to the
love
story?
That. That is crucial.
Yeah. Because I mean, we can do a cabaret show if I wanted to sound pretty.
Well, right. But I always say you don't get to riff unless you have to. It has, you don't get to. Like I said, take the riff out. Gone.
And there has to be an answer behind it. Like,
that's
why
right.
did you riff?
There's
and
a
Lily
reason.
is someone who really helped me, like,
music director's dream.
Yeah.
Okay, what's your nugget, Lily? Come on.
Talk less, listen more. The one thing that I've learned is that the best way to learn is to watch and learn from other people's mistakes, because then you won't make those mistakes.
I love it. I love it. And Rick, you get the last nugget. Talk to us.
I have so many, but this is my favorite nugget, and it was a huge one for me as a performer, and it's going to be really, I think, important for young people who are wanting to get into this business. If you look at audition, people say, how do you deal with the rejection? auditions, you get more no's than yeses. That's true. Even a successful actor gets more no's than yeses. Well, the nugget that did it for me was this: I cannot hinge my success on whether I get the job, whether I get the role. My success hinges on my preparation and my execution at the audition.
Yep.
If I prepared well, and I know I prepared well, and I know I'm going to walk in there and slay, and then I walk in and I slay, I succeeded.
That's right.
If I get the job, it's icing on the cake. If I don't get the job, I'm fine with it. Moving on, next audition. But that was key for me, because it was not good for my mental health to pin all my hopes and dreams on getting that job and being crushed every time I didn't get it.
I love it. Okay, you guys have been awesome. And I know you've been inspiring for our kids today and the community. Thank you so much for your time. And anytime any of you are in San Diego, we would love to host you on our campus. And have one-on-one time with our students. We are big Hamilton lovers, and so thank you. We thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for having us.
Everybody. Thanks, Roxane.
Yo, are we still here?
Yes.